Yeah, I'm just gonna, because if that one's not gonna work, then they're not gonna work.
Yeah, if I don't hit record now, I always forget. So I'm like, I'll do it now and we'll have it. But yeah, we have some members in Europe who really wanted to come and they're like, but it's midnight or 2 a.m. or
Oh
depending on
yeah,
where they're at in Europe.
right. I get it. Huh.
Kaylee's got her dog.
She was whining to come out on the porch, so I had to let her out here.
Awesome. Yeah, it's such a nice night here. Raleigh is just amazing this week for weather.
Okay. So can you just, I know people are kind of coming in, tell me a little bit about the group and sort of who I can expect is in the room.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess I'll start. So there's a few of us. So we're called the females in mass spectrometry and FeMS, but we accept anybody that wants to. So we say FeMS supporters or FeMS, but our whole goal is just to make a really nice collaborative networking area for women in mass spectrometry and anybody that wants to join, because there's so many minorities in mass spectrometry that don't have much of a voice. So we want to make sure that we can make these good connections and people can feel like there is like a support system out there for them.
Nice. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. And so you all meet on a regular basis, which means folks here know each other already.
Kind of. So in some weird way, COVID has been good for us because we have members here all the way from Singapore to China to Canada. And we usually try to do a monthly event so that people can join in. And a lot of times we'll see different faces, a few of the same faces, but a lot of different faces too, depending on whether people are available or not. Yeah, there's still a couple more trickling in, so I might wait a minute or
That's
so.
fine. There's no rush.
Awesome. But yeah, we have a lot of fun in it. So before we get started, everybody, so we'll do have Dr. Horton present first, and then we'll do networking afterwards in breakout rooms so that if you have to go, Devin, you don't have to hang around. But if you want to hang around, we'd love to have you too. So. But we realize your time is very, very valuable, and we're so happy that you were able to accept the invitation to come chat with us.
No problem. It's no problem. There's been a lot of conversation about imposter syndrome lately. Actually, there was another one. I realized I plan to add a few things that came across my social media feed that I saved about imposter syndrome, but I haven't added it yet because I need to do a little bit more research. Sometimes memes are really like poignant, but they're not necessarily correct. But there was one that challenged us to challenge what we think of women having as imposter syndrome to begin with, because maybe it isn't imposter syndrome. Maybe it's a natural response to all of the messages that we get about ourselves, right? And so we love to say that everybody has an imposter syndrome, but I would argue there are certain presidents who had audacity and not imposter syndrome, right?
That is true.
So I think about that now, but I haven't actually updated the presentation yet because I need to be able to like argue that point well.
Anyway, we're gonna have to have you back then.
I was just thinking about it. I was like, I wonder if. Anywho.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to introduce you and then I think we can get going. But yeah, we really are so happy that you're able to join us. So Dr. Devin Horton is the Graduate Diversity Officer for STEM disciplines at UC Davis. And she has nearly 10 years of experience in teaching and program development and a very strong background in mentoring and student success. She's a Los Angeles native, and Dr. Horton was the first in her family to attend college and the only one to earn a PhD. She obtained her BS in biology from Tuskegee University and her PhD in molecular and cellular biology from the University of Michigan. It is her experience as a first-generation socioeconomically disadvantaged student that fuels her passion for providing effective and comprehensive student support. And we're just so excited that you're able to come here and talk to us today. So I'll turn it over to you. And thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
No problem. Thank you for having me. So without further ado, I am going to talk to you all just a little bit about imposter syndrome. We'll have one little breakout room discussion, very short. And then I think you would have normally had a poll, but I think I'm gonna have to have you posted in the chat because my links still aren't working. So anywho, with that being said, let's get this show on the road. All right, I'm assuming everyone can see okay?
Yep.
Sweet. All right, so, there we go. So today the idea is to define the origins of imposter syndrome, learn to identify the various types of imposter syndrome, and then hopefully gather a couple of practical tools that can help you combat the feelings of imposter syndrome. So it's not an especially long presentation, but it hopefully is very thorough. So the first thing I'm going to do in a sec is push you out into your breakout rooms. I like for people to chat in small groups and think about what it means or what it would take or what are the most important characteristics to be successful in your field. And then once you think about that, maybe have a conversation with your breakout room members about ways in which you embody these traits. So what are the traits that makes a person successful in your field? And what attributes do you possess that align with that? Okay. Once I push you into the breakout room, I will copy this question and send it as a broadcast so that you'll have it. Oh, actually, you know what? I can put it in the chat now because sometimes, let's see, sometimes that makes it better. Let's put it in the chat so then everybody will already have access to it. There we go. And then I'm going to breakout rooms. So, what are some, normally I would have a lovely survey for you, but since I don't, does anybody feel comfortable unmuting and telling me what some characteristics are of your field and the ways in which you might embody those characteristics? No pressure.
I can start. We're talking in my breakout room that patience is a very big one because you don't run the instrument when you want. The instrument runs when it wants to. So, and how I embody that? Well, I'm completing my PhD, so I've been very patient with some of the instruments. I get creative with the data you have.
That's important. Yeah, that's really important to consider even in any of the fields I think that we do, but for sure when you've got really complex and sensitive instrumentation, I can imagine. Anyone else? Well, that's okay. Oh, go ahead. Did I hear someone unmute?
Yeah, I guess I would think attention to detail. And as I was just saying to Amber, you have to be able to add and subtract and divide. That helps.
Basic things. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
And be creative when things aren't working, as she was just mentioning, to figure out why. So liking puzzles helps.
Got it. Got it. I see collaborative, literature. Anybody else? So the thing that I want to point out, which isn't exactly directly related to imposter syndrome, but it's important that I throw it in there whenever I can. If you find that those things are really important to your field, when you have the opportunity to assess or evaluate, right, as a faculty person who's on an admissions committee or a hiring manager, maybe those are the kinds of things you can be looking for instead of the jargon we normally put on those stupid resumes and CVs, right? So there's a definite mismatch between what we say makes a person successful in certain fields and what we look for on applications. So just a little nugget. With that being said, back to the presentation. Imposter syndrome is actually officially known as imposter phenomenon. It's not a real syndrome. It's a psychological pattern where, despite evidence of your own competence, you're convinced that you're a fraud and that you don't deserve your achievements, and you attribute your success to luck or having tricked the people into believing that you're more capable than you really are. The original authors didn't really want it to be called a syndrome because they thought it would just be another way of pathologizing women, but here we are. Some of the origins. So before I actually show this, would folks like to put in the chat, where do you think imposter syndrome might originate? Like, where would you guesstimate that imposter syndrome would start in your life cycle? You can unmute if you want, or you can just drop some ideas in the chat.
I would almost think it would be when we went to school or something and you started comparing yourself to other kids in your class.
A lot of people say childhood, teen years, which is probably what you're talking about, Erin, when you get to like junior high and start looking left and right. Any other thoughts or suggestions? Childhood, teen years? Okay, so it is childhood, but it's really interesting where it comes from in childhood. So it usually, you know, when you're a child, a bright child, which I assume all of us on this call are, you're valued for your intelligence. And because you're valued for your intelligence, when you do poorly, it will lead to feelings of self-doubt, right? And that becomes perpetuated over and over and over because you maybe fall short of what you think you should do, but you do still tend to do well. So you still progress really well. So you still are considered this high achieving person, but now all of your worth ends up being tied up in your intelligence. And so when you get to college or graduate school or faculty roles, or you're working in industry or whatever it is that you're going to do, if your research or your grades don't meet the level of excellence you thought it should be, or you had hoped for, you tend to start to have feelings of imposter syndrome. It can come from very unrealistic ideas about what it means to be competent. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about ways to combat imposter syndrome. The other thing that happens, particularly for folks from marginalized populations, is you add on top of all of that other stuff, the stereotype threat. And stereotype threat is the belief or the feeling from marginalized folks that we're at risk for either conforming to or confirming stereotypes about social identity groups. And so stereotype threat can really impact or increase feelings of imposter syndrome. So there are 5 common types of imposter syndrome. The perfectionist is a person who sets excessively high goals for themselves, and if they don't reach those goals, they start to doubt themselves and worry about measuring up. A lot of type A science people tend to see themselves as perfectionists. But I would challenge any one of us to do a 360 survey, which is to have other people ask you about yourself. Is to ask other people about how they see you. And you might find that your imposter syndrome is different externally than how you experience it internally. The soloist is a person who feels like needing help means they're phony and they don't really know what it is that they're doing. The natural genius, this person needs to believe that they're naturally brilliant. And so they judge their competence based on how easy and how quickly they can do something as opposed to their efforts or the actual outcome. They often feel shame if it takes a long time to master something. And I probably fall somewhere in there too, because I love to tell people I don't do things I'm not good at, which is a really terrible way to be. So like, don't be like me, be better. The super person pushes themselves to work harder and harder to measure up. But usually all of that work is just a false cover for their internal insecurities. These people tend to be addicted to the validation that comes from actually like seeming busy and doing work, but not the actual work or the product itself. The expert measures their competence based on what and how much they know or they can do. And they don't think they'll ever know enough. And they fear that they're going to eventually be exposed for like not being experienced or not knowing things. So I also have some of the experts. I give a lot of talks. I give a lot of the same talks that I created. And yet every time I do, I go, oh, what if they figure out that I don't know what I'm talking about? So that's where I hang out, between number 3 and number 5. Do folks want to, I'm going to pull it back and see. what is your imposter syndrome? This would normally be a lovely cloud survey that we would all link to and answer, but my links aren't working for some reason, so I didn't put them in here. So you can drop it in the chat. Which one do you think that you are? Who do we have in here? Do you have any natural geniuses? Any of my peeps in here with me? Soloists? I'm gonna go to the next one so that people can kind of see. Let's see what we have. We've got a number 5. A lot of folks who end up going into teaching roles tend to be in number 5 as well, right? You teach every single day, you teach something, and you still worry about, you can teach your students every day, but then if somebody asks you to give that lesson to your peers, then you freak out like, oh my God, I don't know it, when in reality, it's the same information, but all of them, Crystal says I have all of them. I get it. Well, hopefully we're gonna give you a couple of tools to make you feel a little bit better. Okay, so just an FYI, some common behaviors that are associated with imposter syndrome are basically things that take you away from doing your work, right? Self-sabotage, self-doubt, procrastination, and avoidance, amongst many other. I just point that out because sometimes you find yourself like procrastinating and you think it's because you're tired or whatever, and it may just be that you're afraid that whatever you finally produce is not going to be very good. I do that a lot. So who am I to be sitting here giving you all this information anyway? So I grew up pretty poor. I wasn't raised by my parents, but I did go to a really great high school and an awesome college. And I was the first person in our family to go to college and the only one to earn a PhD. And to this day, with the exception of a handful, I'm the only professor any of them actually have ever met. And then some of them don't even know we used to be a professor. They still think I went to medical school and then I like operate on people. It's a thing. Everybody on here knows what I'm talking about. we know this life. But amongst all of those things, what I am is a person who still suffers from imposter syndrome and stereotype threat. It doesn't go away, even if I sound like I know what I'm talking about. So the question is, how did I make it this far? And the first thing I want to dispel is the stupid term grit. The next one I'm taking down is growth mindset. So I'm coming for you, growth mindset. But right now, it wasn't grit. And so I like to put this this particular slide in my presentation so that people understand why it isn't grit. Grit is just a fancy way of giving me a high five for surviving the terrible oppressive society or environment that I had to live in without actually calling the environment oppressive and racist, right? So we don't want to use the term grit because you cannot reward students for it's like Squid Game, being the winner of Squid Game. That's what grit is, and I don't want it. Okay, so anyway, it was finding community and engaging in actual self-care, and I don't mean getting like pampered and a massage. I mean genuine, real life self-care. And you all are in these very elite environments. And honestly, in order to be able to survive, and I don't mean survive and do well, I mean like survive and still own who you are, you have to engage in self-care. You have to be really intentional about the kind of space you carve out for yourself. You can't control other people's behavior, but you can make safe havens for yourself. And it will really help because those safe havens consist of people who ultimately pour into and reinforce all of the best things about you. So a few things just off the bat: manage stressful thoughts. You can do that through meditation. Prioritize activities that make you feel the most productive. So do things that make you happy. It doesn't have to be things that are fun. It doesn't have to be things that are you're necessarily very good at. But I mean, I was crocheting for a while. I was doing watercolors. Wasn't very good, but at the end, the ugly pictures made me feel good. And I really didn't think I would like it because, again, we already talked about this. I don't like doing things that I'm not very good at. So I bought the art supplies during COVID. I was like, I don't want to do this. It took me a very long time. And then I did like a sunset. Everybody does a stupid sunset. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. And then the next day I woke up and it dries. You have to wait for it to dry. And I was like, okay, this is a thing. And it gives you endorphins, right? It sends off endorphins. You don't have to be great at it. I love grocery shopping. Some people like, I don't know, scrapbooking, but doing things that just bring you genuine joy is a really great way to reset your focus on yourself, which will really help to at least push away the feelings of imposter syndrome. And then the last thing is sleep and exercise, which, I mean, to be fair, that's good for everything. So it just would be wrong if I, as a scientist, didn't tell you to get sleep and exercise. And honestly, I'm told that every time, what is it? Every 15 minutes of sleep you don't get, you die, or every hour of sleep you don't get, you lose 15 minutes of life. It's probably not true, but pretend it is and get more sleep. Okay, so here are the real tools. All right, so volunteer in leadership positions and tutoring, do tutoring things and mentoring things for younger students. Honestly, engaging in activities that you're good at, like teaching others, is really good for your confidence and for your self-esteem. You can also volunteer to help others, but not in a capacity such as mentoring or tutoring. It could be at a nursing home, or it could be at a shelter, an animal shelter. Just being responsible for others, someone other than yourself, allows you to focus on something other than yourself. And it takes your mind off of the competition with your peers and your colleagues. A lot of the imposter syndrome will creep up as you start to compare yourself with other people, right, along your journey. Of course, I will say build community 9 million times over. You need to build a supportive network. You have to find your people. Now, here's the caveat. You want to find your people who are not in your discipline. So you already have a cohort of folks right now on this call who are in your discipline, and that's great. And maybe these are not people you would be in direct competition with. So that could work. But ultimately, when we're thinking about graduate school or biotech, like research environments, sometimes there is a level of competition that will fuel the feelings of imposter syndrome. So I always encourage people to find friends or a community of folks who aren't in that same field, so that when you're fussing or you're feeling insecure, you're not talking to someone who could exacerbate that feeling, right? There's no direct competition there. And so you and that group of people or those individual people can go back and forth discussing and reinforcing and supporting each other in this situation without feeling any insecurities or potential fears about competition. Find a supportive and understanding mentor, similarly outside of your discipline. So you already have mentors within your discipline. You need those people, you absolutely do. But you also need mentors who don't have to write you a letter of recommendation, whose only interest in you is in supporting your mental health and well-being. People who have maybe come along the same path as you, have done similar work as you, but aren't directly attached to your success in your field. And in that way, you don't have to be so guarded when you go to them to help you combat the feelings of imposter syndrome. Okay? Make a list of your strengths. Look back at examples of your own successful work or positive reviews that maybe somebody's given you. Remind yourself of things that you've accomplished, things that you've done well. Now, I say read your own publications if you have them. There's a caveat there too. That can be stressful because every time you reread it, you're going to find a typo. So you do that at your own risk, okay? This one is really, really hard, which is why I kind of throw it in the middle. I would have put it at the end, but I just feel like people get real hung up on that one. So I try to put it in the middle, except that some tasks just won't be done perfectly. They just won't. And complete is better than perfect. That's always going to be true. Maybe not always, mostly. Beware of how you talk to yourself. This is really, really important. In addition to surrounding ourselves with people outside, one of the things that you have to work on in order to really, really stand in your confidence, combat swipe away the imposter syndrome and stand in your confidence, is that you are responsible for your success. You have to purge the inner critic. You have to talk to yourself with kindness, the same way that you would talk to a friend, right? Talk to yourself about what you did to accomplish your success. So if you recently got a master's in chemistry, well, nobody just handed you a master's in chemistry. What did you actually do? Well, I went to school. I took this many units of courses. I got these grades for these courses. I did my thesis. I like talk yourself through the process, through the steps of the things that you've done. And a lot of times, at least for me, it will remind you, A, of why you like doing what you do, right? What brought you there? And then thinking about the places where you've been successful just boosts your self-esteem. It just boosts your confidence. And then lastly, keep a running list of all the compliments you receive. Well, that's not lastly. Lastly's always therapy of the compliments that you receive. This is important. It's really difficult to remember, but I'm trying to catalog them lately as I'm at a transition in my own career. I've thought about like, okay, I need to hear what people are saying to me and try and keep it close. And I would say if you just have like a little sticky note and you have gotten maybe keep track of the compliments for a week and then make a list of them and put them on a sticky note on your laptop or wherever, so that you can actually see them and be reminded of some of the things that you're good at. And then of course, therapy. This is really important because when we're talking about purging the inner critic, these are these irrational thoughts that are telling you that you're lucky and you don't deserve what you've gotten. Therapy, a good therapist will help you develop tools so that when those thoughts crop up, you know how to combat them. Because it's really easy for me to say, purge the inner critic, don't think negative thoughts. But like, what does that look like in practice? I can't stop myself from thinking, I just think, right? You just do it. And so what do you do? How do you manage that? And one of the great things about therapy is you can engage in therapy and you will develop tools to be able to recognize when the negative thoughts are happening and then to actually strike them down, right? To combat them with evidence of the contrary. So a few things to remember, and then I'll open it up for some questions if you all have them or people just want to share in general. Imposter syndrome is lonely. You live in your head, basically, right? It's inside your inner mind. And one way to remind yourself of that is, you know, a lot of the places that you are, a lot of the things that you're doing, where you're successful, other people have had to select you for things, right? So they are seeing it. They don't think you're an imposter. So it is a very internal thing. And it can sit in there for long periods of time without you even noticing. And this can be really bad for your mental health. Human beings were meant to be in community with each other. So the best first thing you can do, which it seems like you all have already done, if you've got folks who are at the midnight hour here in a workshop, is finding your community. That is always the best first step that I recommend. These are some resources at UC Davis. This one, well, the Student Mental Health Services at UC Davis and Therapy for Black Girls. I'm going to click this link because whenever I say Therapy for Black Girls, I know people think, you know, I'm not a Black girl, right? And so, I have to show them how it works. All right. So Therapy for Black Girls was born out of a desire to get more Black women to go to therapy. And it isn't just for Black women, but what it is a place where Black women can go and know that they will find a therapist who speaks their language. But as everybody knows, oftentimes, or most times, well, maybe everybody doesn't know that. I take that back. I will just say this. All of these therapists are really good for people from marginalized communities. They are usually social justice oriented. And so they're really good at working very objectively with folks across a variety of identities. And you don't have to be Black. So the reason I brought us to this page is because I wanted you to see that you can click find a therapist. And so you can choose in office or virtual. We'll pick virtual just for the fun of it. What state? We're in California. Well, not everybody, but we are. Virtual therapist is okay. You can click search. And then the beauty of this is you can actually search by your insurance, right? Or you can do it by zip code. So I'm going to put in Davis, California. And There are 21 therapists in Davis that one could choose from, right? And you can filter them down by whether or not it's virtual. You can filter them down by your insurance, whether they, do LGBT work. Do you want someone who's got a PhD? Do you want somebody who does social work? So, LCSW, whatever the case, you have options. And this updates regularly, but the point is, all of these people, obviously they're mostly women, but they're not only women. All of these people are people who are likely to give you the kind of therapy experience that will help you combat imposter syndrome, in particular because that whole list, ironically, was Black women. It's rarely only Black women, but it updates so regularly you can't really know. But you can rest assured that a Black lady knows about some imposter syndrome baseline. You can just be confident about that. So anyways, those are pretty much the things. It's not a ton. It's really just finding your community and engaging in the kind of self-care and self-reflection and being kind to yourself, and then doing things for other people. Oftentimes doing things for other people really does recalibrate what we think we are versus what we actually are, especially when you do the tutoring and the mentoring stuff, right? So if you can TA, that's usually helpful. It's also maybe why some faculty have God complexes, right? Because they've maybe taken that a little too far. I don't know. Anywho, so those are the things. And I know you all have a little networking thing to do, and it's 4:38, so I don't want to take all your time. So I'm open for questions if folks have them. I see there's something in the chat. Oh.
Yeah, and if you guys want to put things in the chat or just unmute, we'd love to entertain questions that way. I guess I'll start off with one. If so did you ever find yourself really lost, and like how did you turn yourself around, or like you really felt like you were really, really stuck, and like how did you get out of that hole?
Oh Lord, there's so many times. So I'm gonna pick one because it doesn't stop. It's just yes. The answer is yes. So one of the most recent, well, not recent ones, I guess one of the most prominent ones that sticks out in my mind is I was in my postdoc, and the woman I was working for was a maniac who was really, really smart, which happens, we know, a scientist. And the work she did was really awesome. And I was very excited about the work. And she was giving me a lot of autonomy, which was cool, right? I had my own office in a way that it was almost like my own lab. It was tiny, but it was my own space separate from the other lab. So it was going to be great. And only a month in, my cells got contaminated, which happens. And she was infuriated. Mind you, these are primary cells that are coming from like liposuction patients, and we're trying to propagate them from they were muscle cells. It was very difficult. And so anyway, I'm doing all this, and she keeps saying like things like, well, if you can't get your cells to grow, maybe you want to do translational research instead of this research, which I thought was pretty insulting to the people who do translational research who are giving us these cells, but whatever. So I just remember thinking like, wait, is this what they were talking about? Like, is this what they mean when they say postdocs can be miserable? What the heck do? I don't know what to do, because my friends don't know anything about a postdoc, right? What am I going to tell them? They have no idea. My family doesn't have any idea. I'm in this place that I've never lived before. And this woman is insane, but I like the research and I have this really fancy fellowship. So now what do I do? And my confidence was really low. And honestly, I ran. She was very rude and disrespectful and just a lot of things, but I did have the option to just switch labs. And I was like, no, I don't think so. I ran. I just decided I didn't want to stay in a space where I was going to be constantly challenged in a way where I was going to be constantly feeling like an imposter. And for me, it ended up being the best thing for me, because I went to an HBCU And most HBCUs are primarily teaching institutions, which means you can get away with not doing a full, well, not anymore, but back then you could get away with not doing a full postdoc because they didn't really think you needed to do mostly teaching. So I got that teaching job and was faculty at like way too young to be faculty. I should not have been faculty. I did a good job. I shouldn't have been. But anyway, so that happened. But now, like 40-year-old Devin looks back at 28-year-old Devin and I think, that wasn't necessarily the best way to handle that. And if I just could have stood in my power, you know, and understood that I know what I'm doing, contaminated cells from a primary source is super common, and you know that, and I know that. So let's figure out a way to fix this and keep it moving. I would probably be at some R1 institution as we speak. I don't know that that's what I want, because I went on a different path and I love the path that I took, but I can't know now because I was so scared that she was just confirming some internal fears that I already had. So I was just like, yeah, I don't know these problems. And I just ran away. And I have never quit anything. And I hadn't up to that point. And I was just like, oh my God, what do I do? But it turned out okay. But I do wish I'd had mentors around me to tell me, well, no, like we get that she's upset, but she's wrong. And it's okay to push back. You're fine. You are right. What you're talking about makes sense. What you're proposing is scientifically sound, right? I just did not have the confidence back then. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, Erin, but that is the one that stands out to me all the time.
No, I think that was really helpful.
Good. Amber.
Yeah, I do. I'm like trying to wrap my head around the question that I'm trying to ask. So I'm not sure if I'm going to word this well or not, but you mentioned the imposter syndrome from fear of like playing into stereotypes a couple times, but then in your list of like where imposter syndrome can stem from, I didn't, the expert or this or that. I didn't really see where that stereotype one would fit in. And I was wondering if you could talk about this a little bit more, like, so like as a woman, if I break down in tears at work, am I playing into some stereotype of being a woman, and does that then play into imposter syndrome or something? So I'm trying to like understand that.
Right, I see what you mean. So the fear, the not breaking down in tears, because even though you want to, that happens, the preventing yourself of having actual emotions is a result of stereotype spread. So there's this fear that you'll be perceived as weak because women are perceived as weak in general, and evidence of that to outsiders is women crying. So that is the stereotype threat for sure. The feelings of wanting to cry will make you feel like an imposter, because you will look around and say, well, if nobody else wants to cry and I'm the only one who wants to cry, there must be something wrong with me. Does that help?
Totally. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Anyone else? Everybody's toured?
Yeah, I love to ask. Hi, I'm Tusi. I'm from Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, hi. You're the one who's in Australia where it's midnight. Oh my goodness.
No, for us it's daytime.
Okay.
It's good. Thanks, David. It's a great talk. And it's inspired me because being in a white country with the brown skin is not easy. But I think it's a resilience we build up. When I hear you talk, it gives me so much power. But here it's also indigenous people who are struggling to be in the society, or especially in science area. It's very lack of. I wish we can implement something here similar to US helping website. I was thinking where we can approach, but great talk and great advice. And I have one question. How could you build up your resilience to come to that level?
Honestly, it all goes back to surrounding yourself with people who love you and who care about you. And I don't mean your family. I mean colleagues, again, who aren't necessarily in your field, but who believe in you. I had coffee last night with a friend. A colleague. We partner on a lot of things, but we are not in the same field. And, you know, she's looking for a new job. And I just thought, she's really great. I thought, oh, well, you'll be great for these things. I think you should consider these. And then she was talking to me about the work that I do. And she gave me a couple of compliments, which is normal. But one of them was so, I don't know, it was transformative for me, hearing her say it. And I was like, oh, I guess I am good at that. Right. So it's having people in your space who pour into you constantly, because otherwise, I don't even know any other way to be. You can combat them internally, right? Going to therapy or going, you can go to group therapy, things like that, to just get the tools to kind of combat those feelings and build up resilience. But in all honesty, it takes the village of folks around you. What I will also say, though, I need to acknowledge this plain and clearly. It shouldn't be your job to build up resilience to that. That's what I mean about not using grit, right? You shouldn't have to build up resilience. The system needs to change so people can thrive. All of our systems are designed to be punitive in some way. And because of that, again, I keep thinking of Squid Game and Hunger Games and these things where people are basically clawing their way towards only one thing, when in reality, there's enough to go around for everyone. So we really shouldn't be existing from a scarcity model. You should not have to build up resilience. Systems should operate so that people can function, can have what they need to be able to function within those systems and be successful. So I understand that we don't have a choice and that we do have to build up resilience, but I just want you to know you shouldn't have to. Even though we do have to, we shouldn't. And so in as much as we can, you know, we should try in our practice to create environments when we have the control and the power to do so, create environments that help people grow, that pour into them, that don't require them to need grit, that don't require them to need resilience outside of resilience against their research, right? You do need resilience in research, right? You need to be willing to come back. But I should not have to be having resilience to withstand the racist microaggressions in my lab, right? So I just want to say that.
Thank
I
you
saw
so
another
much.
hand. No problem. I just saw another hand raised. Where did it go? Let's see. Oh,
It's me, but
oh, okay. There you
no,
go.
Erin
Yes,
is going to
that's fine.
say we have to bring it to a close now. Can I take 30 seconds, Erin?
You have time.
Okay. So since you're talking about grit at the very start, you said you were going to take down the word grit and you were going to take down the word growth mindset, but you never told us why.
I know. So growth mindset is all of it is about, okay. So this is back to my recent comment. We are sort of socialized to value everything but people, right? And when you say growth mindset, oh God, I have a whole, actually, you know what? I'm just going to pull it up for you. I'll just show you. So I only gave you one of those things. But there's a whole little thing. It's called Subversive Thread. And it's really great. Let's see if I have it as a, oh, where'd it go? Oh, here it goes. Okay. I'm going to share my screen and show you. So it's not just grit. It's not just growth mindset. It's a bunch of terms that, where'd my Zoom go? That seem like they are positive. And this is the group who made this were specifically thinking about school age children, but I think it applies. So, all right, let's see. Here we go. How do I do this? Oh, this way? All right, so there's grit. Another one is underrepresented minority, right? In the US, maybe, but globally, not really. And it makes, I always tell people, I don't feel very minor, but also it is diminutive. No matter how you slice that pie, it just is. You don't care about academic rigor, college ready. Oh, the achievement gap is another one. There's no gap. There's a resources gap, not an achievement gap. And maybe that's the best way I can explain the whole growth mindset thing. It's because what these terms do is place value everywhere except for the people. And then what they do is inadvertently or subconsciously assign blame to everything except the thing that is actually a blame. So for example, if achievement gap, when you say the words achievement gap, you have two groups of people, one is achieving well and one isn't, and the gap is in the middle. When in reality, Who cares about the achievement? There's a resource gap. One group is more resourced and the other one isn't. And that really is where we should be thinking. Oh, look. So yes, under resource. That's another one, right? So like growth mindset, it's just one of those things where it's like the pull yourself up by your bootstraps when half the people don't even have boots. And then there's do you know what I mean? I feel like I'm mangling it up, but ultimately it's not naming the actual systems, and it's trying to assign value to work or to processes or to doing without any acknowledgement of all of the systemic barriers that create the systems in which one would even need to have such a thing. If people had their basic needs met, many of these things wouldn't even be an issue, right? We're just talking basic needs. We're not even talking about abundance. And so that's, I don't know if that really gets to the heart of it. But yeah, the other thing I'll say is that often a lot of these terms will be like either or. So if you're not on one end of it, then you must be on the other end, right? So if you don't have grit, then you're a lazy bum who doesn't want to work. But how are you even measuring grit? Ask Michelle Rhee. She's gotten her ass handed to her for that at this point. It's like a non sequitur. But right, so like if I grew up in an impoverished area and I don't claw my way out, I don't have grit. Surviving took grit, right? Everybody can't do more than survive when the system, the forces are so negative. And that is also true when we're talking about the experiences of all kinds of marginalizations, right? There are all these expectations that like, not expectations, rewards for like pushing through difficult things, as opposed to anger and dismay at the difficulties, right? And so it's just trying to get us to reposition where our mindsets are about some of these things. I hope that's helpful. I know I said a whole lot of words. Oh, actually, I think I can share the document if people want it. Oh, you know what? I'll email it to Erin because it's a PDF now. So
Yeah, no, if you could email that, I'll make sure that these guys get a copy, because
yeah, absolutely.
that was really cool when you were popping things up. It's like, oh, wow.
Yes. Okay, let's see. Oh, yep. I just added it to the email.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And like everybody, let's give Dr. Horton a huge round of applause. Every time you talk, I really enjoy it. It makes my brain just think and zoom around, but I learned so much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm very glad. I know people ask me to talk all the time and I'm like, I don't know why y'all want to hear me blabber. I just run my mouth. But I'm glad it's useful and I appreciate the invitation anytime.
Yeah, no, you need to put that in your compliment corner. Like, you are an amazing speaker. So
I clearly still, thank you. I still suffer from imposter syndrome.
Yes.
If anybody wants to know, it does not ever go away. The voices get, quieter, or you get more confident about very specific things, and then imposter syndrome will just pop up somewhere for something else. So it doesn't ever quite go away, but you do learn how to manage it.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. You're
very
welcome. Appreciate you coming, and yeah, you can zoom out whenever you need. I know you've had a busy day.
Feel free to send an email if you need it. Erin has my contact information.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, and so we can do announcements now. So I'm glad that you guys were all able to join. Every time she talks, it really does make me think, and that there's so much to learn on that side that I think we all suffer from imposter syndrome. So it's good to hear of ways to think about how we can help ourselves. And so for announcements, I have a couple.
How did you meet her?
So I went to a different a Zoom seminar and she was speaking. And so I was like, I've got to get her for FeMS. And so then I blind emailed her, and luckily she emailed me back, but it was clear back in April. So her calendar is very busy. And she's like, oh, I'm pretty booked up until about October. So then I was able to throw her on the schedule for October. But yeah, I knew she would be good for you guys. But yeah, so for fun announcements, hopefully some of you guys are able to make it to ASMS. So we have some really great things going on with FeMS at ASMS if you're able to come. We were asked by Mass Tech to help them in a dinner honoring Amina Woods. So Amina Woods is going to be retiring this year from the NIH after 22 years of service. So we're going to help. Mass Tech is covering the dinner, and they're just inviting us to come honor Amina, and Amina's going to speak to anybody that comes and just give a short kind of description of her career and advice she would have for FEMS. So if you're able to come to ASMS, I'll put the link in the chat. Please register, because we only have 45 seats that are allowed for people, just because of max room conditions, but we would love to have you guys join. And then on Wednesday night at 5:45, there's going to be the Networking for Scientists, Women in Mass, or Celebrating Women in Mass Spec. And Jessica, who's on here, is going to be one of our panelists. And then we'll also have 3 other panelists. So you guys will see announcements about those coming pretty soon. And we're really excited. They're going to talk about their journeys and advice they have. And then following that, we're going to head to, it's kind of a bar type of area, but it's called Strange Love, and have a FEMS gathering that's going to be sponsored by Mobile Ion. So Mobile Ion is going to sponsor that. So we'll also be sending out a registration for that so we can get a head count, because we were able to rent out a whole area, but they haven't given me the max number yet. So we want to make sure that we don't overfill or have any issues there, but please join us there also. So that should be really, really fun. And I think Kaylee just put in the chat the registration information for Amina Woods's dinner. So we wanted to make sure you guys got the information first, since you're coming to the event tonight. But if you're able to come to ASMS, please join us. I think it'll be really great. And Amina is feeling very honored that she's going to be honored at this dinner, and she's done so much in her career. So it's really great to honor another female mass spec person.
Which
So
night is it?
It's going to be Monday night.
Hmm.
Yeah, Monday night at 7 to 9, and then the other ones are going to be Wednesday night with the workshop starting at 5:45, and then we'll go to about 10 is when we have the bar rented till. And so, any other announcements?
Just have to stay healthy for another week so we can go there, huh?
Yes, definitely stay healthy, get all your stuff turned into ASMS so you get your vaccine information and your COVID test. But yeah, other than that, if there's no other announcements, let's do our breakout rooms. If you guys don't have time to stay, we totally understand, but it's always a great time to meet other people that were able to join, and you might get to meet somebody from different countries or different areas, or maybe even people that you'll run into at a conference. Hopefully this year, hopefully things stay on in person and we actually get to see each other. So I'll start making breakout rooms. If you have to go ahead and leave though, and then you won't need to worry about going to a breakout room. But thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you had as much fun as I did. So I'll see you guys. There we go.